Good evening, and welcome to Stories for Sleep. I'm Mary, your host for the night. As you settle in, take a deep breath and let your worries drift away. Tonight's tale takes us on a journey to the Savanna, a breathtaking expanse of land that teems with life. Before we begin tonight's sleep story, let's take a few moments to prepare for a restful slumber. Take a deep breath and exhale, releasing any tension in your body. As we journey through the Savanna, the stars twinkle brightly overhead, casting a soft and serene light over the campsite. The sounds of nocturnal animals fill the air, reminding us that we are not alone in this wild place. Yet, the stillness of the Savanna and the gentle sway of the trees around us invite us to relax and let go. As you listen to this story, allow your mind to wander through the vastness of the Savanna. Let the peacefulness of the night and the majesty of the natural world lull you into a deep, restful sleep. Close your eyes and let yourself drift off into the tranquility of the Savanna. Jane was a young woman in her mid-20s, with long curly hair that flowed down her back and bright, curious eyes that sparkled with excitement. She had grown up in a small town in the United States, where she had always felt a deep sense of restlessness and yearning for adventure. From a young age, Jane had been fascinated by the natural world and had a particular love for the vast open savannas of Africa. After years of dreaming and saving up money, Jane had finally decided to take the plunge and embark on a solo journey to explore the African savanna. Jane was a meticulous planner, and she knew that a journey through the vast savanna of Africa would require careful preparation. She spent months researching the various regions and ecosystems, poring over maps and guidebooks to get a sense of the terrain and wildlife she would encounter along the way. She studied the climate and weather patterns of the region, calculating the best time of year to travel and planning her itinerary accordingly. She knew that the savanna could be a harsh and unforgiving environment, with scorching temperatures during the day and chilly nights, so she made sure to pack a variety of clothing and gear to suit any weather conditions. Jane also researched the local cultures and customs of the regions she planned to visit, eager to immerse herself in the rich history and traditions of the people who lived in the savanna. She read up on the various tribes and ethnic groups, learning about their languages, customs, and beliefs, and studying the etiquette and taboos of each culture to ensure that she would be respectful and courteous in her interactions. As she planned her itinerary, Jane made sure to include a variety of different activities and experiences to make the most of her adventure. She planned hiking and camping trips through remote regions of the savanna, hoping to encounter some of the rare and elusive wildlife that called the area home. She also scheduled visits to local villages and markets, eager to sample the cuisine and learn about the local crafts and traditions. To ensure her safety and well-being, Jane also researched the various health risks and safety precautions that she would need to take while traveling through the savanna. She studied the various diseases and illnesses that were prevalent in the region, such as malaria and yellow fever, and made sure to get all the necessary vaccinations and medications before setting off on her journey. She also learned about the various safety hazards of the savanna, such as flash floods and predatory animals, and made sure to pack all the necessary equipment and supplies to ensure her survival in case of an emergency. Finally, after months of meticulous planning and preparation, Jane felt confident and ready to embark on her adventure. She knew that the journey ahead would be challenging and unpredictable, but she was determined to make the most of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to explore the breathtaking beauty and diversity of the African savanna. The day of departure had finally arrived, and Jane woke up early in the morning, eager to start her adventure. She double-checked her packing list, making sure that she had everything she needed for the journey ahead. She packed her bags with all the essentials that she had prepared for weeks: a sturdy tent, a warm sleeping bag, a water bottle, a compass, and a camera to capture all the incredible sights she would encounter along the way. She made sure to bring plenty of sunscreen insect repellent, and first aid supplies, knowing that the savannah could be a harsh and unforgiving environment. As she packed her bags, Jane felt a sense of excitement and anticipation building inside her. She had dreamed of exploring the savannah for years, and now that the moment had finally arrived, she felt a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. She took a deep breath and reminded herself of all the preparation and planning she had done, reassuring herself that she was ready for anything that the savannah could throw at her. With her bags packed and her gear in order, Jane set off on her journey. She made her way to the airport. She took a deep breath and tried to calm her nerves. She had been planning this trip for months, poring over maps and guidebooks, and now the moment had finally arrived. She was about to embark on a journey through the savannah, a vast and beautiful landscape that held so much mystery and wonder. As she settled into her seat on the plane, Jane felt a sense of excitement building inside her. She knew that the next few weeks would be filled with adventure, challenge, and discovery. She had packed all the essentials she needed, including a sturdy backpack, a comfortable pair of hiking boots, and plenty of sunscreen and insect repellent. She had also made sure to bring a camera to capture all the incredible sights she would encounter along the way. As the plane descended towards the runway, Jane pressed her nose against the window, eager to catch her first glimpse of the African savannah. She could see the landscape below, shifting from a patchwork of green and brown to a vast expanse of open plains, punctuated by clusters of trees and winding rivers. As the wheels touched down, the excitement in Jane's heart was palpable. She could feel the heat and humidity of the African air, even from inside the plane. She grabbed her bag and made her way to the exit, eager to set foot on African soil and start her adventure. As she stepped off the plane and onto the tarmac, Jane was hit by a wave of heat and humidity. She took a deep breath, feeling the sweat already starting to bead on her forehead. She was wearing loose-fitting clothing, but the heat was still almost unbearable. As Jane stepped out of the customs and immigration area, she was immediately hit by a wave of sensory overload. The airport terminal was teeming with people, and the air was filled with the sounds of different languages being spoken, blending together into a rich, vibrant tapestry of sound. She could hear the distinctive clicking of Xhosa, spoken by a group of people to her left, the melodious French spoken by a couple ahead of her in the queue, and the guttural Swahili of a man carrying a large wooden crate on his head. The air was thick with the smell of spices and cooking food, a heady mix of cumin, turmeric, and coriander that made her mouth water. She could see vendors selling all kinds of exotic snacks and meals, from grilled meats to fragrant rice dishes, their displays overflowing with colorful fruits and vegetables. Amidst the throngs of people, Jane caught glimpses of traditional African clothing, brightly patterned dresses, shirts, and wraps made from colorful fabrics. She saw groups of women wearing intricately braided hairstyles and men in traditional robes and head wraps. As she made her way through the airport terminal, Jane felt like she was stepping into a whole new world. She was struck by the vibrant energy of the people around her, the colors and sounds and smells that seemed to permeate every corner of the space. And amidst it all, she felt a sense of excitement and anticipation building within her. She was ready to embrace this new culture, to explore every corner of the savannah, and to immerse herself in the beauty and diversity of this incredible place. As Jane stepped out of the airport terminal, the African sun hit her like a wall of heat. She felt the dry, hot air against her skin, and the glare of the sun made her squint. But there was also a warmth to the air that she found comforting, a sense of energy and vitality that seemed to be infused into every molecule. She hoisted her bags onto her shoulders and looked around, taking in her surroundings. The airport was surrounded by dusty roads and flat plains that stretched out as far as the eye could see, dotted with acacia trees and scrubby bushes. Off in the distance, she could see a group of men herding cattle, their brightly colored robes fluttering in the breeze. To her right, a group of children were playing a game of soccer with an old, worn ball. The sound of their laughter and shouts filled the air, making her smile. With a sense of determination and excitement, Jane set off down the dusty road, eager to begin her adventure. She knew that there were challenges and obstacles ahead, but she was determined to overcome them and make the most of this incredible opportunity. As she walked, she felt a sense of liberation and freedom that she had never experienced before. She was far from home, in a place that was completely new and unfamiliar, but that only made her more determined to explore and discover everything that the Savanna had to offer. And so, with her bags on her shoulders and her heart full of hope and anticipation, Jane set off into the vast expanse of the African Savanna, ready to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. Jane was determined to make the most of her African adventure, and so she took the time to acclimate herself to the local culture and climate. She knew that the Savanna could be a harsh and unforgiving environment, and that it would be important to be prepared and knowledgeable before embarking on any major expeditions. In order to better understand the culture and customs of the people she would encounter on her journey, Jane made a point of spending time with the locals. She stayed in a small village on the edge of the Savanna, where she was able to meet people from different tribes and communities. She was fascinated by the variety of languages and dialects she encountered, and spent hours practicing basic phrases and learning about the customs and traditions of each group. Jane was excited to explore the diverse and unique flavors of African cuisine during her adventure through the Savanna. She knew that trying local dishes would be a great way to immerse herself in the culture and traditions of the region. With an open mind and an adventurous spirit, she dove into the local cuisine with enthusiasm. One of the first dishes Jane tried was made with yams, a staple food in many African cultures. She found the flavor to be slightly sweet and earthy, with a hearty texture that was satisfying and filling. She also tried cassava, a starchy root vegetable that was often used to make a type of flatbread called fufu. The fufu was dense and chewy, and was often used as a utensil to scoop up stews and sauces. Plantains were another common ingredient in African cuisine, and Jane found that she loved their sweet and slightly savory flavor. She tried them fried, boiled, and mashed, and found that each preparation brought out a different aspect of their flavor profile. In addition to the vegetarian options, Jane also sampled a variety of meats, including goat, beef, and fish. She was impressed by the freshness and quality of the meat, which was often cooked in a stew or grilled over an open flame. She especially enjoyed a fish dish that was cooked with spices and served with a side of steamed vegetables. Perhaps the most adventurous part of Jane's culinary exploration came when she tried some of the more exotic offerings, such as fried termites and roasted crickets. Although she was initially hesitant to try these unusual delicacies, she found that they had a surprisingly satisfying crunch and a rich, nutty flavor. She was impressed by the resourcefulness of the local people, who had found ways to use even the smallest creatures as a source of protein. By experiencing the flavors and spices of African cooking, Jane was able to deepen her understanding of the local culture and traditions. She found that food was a powerful way to connect with the people she met, and that it helped her appreciate the complexity and diversity of this incredible place. As the fiery ball of sun dipped below the horizon, casting shades of orange and red across the sky, Jane would watch in awe as her new friends began to light a fire. They would gather twigs, branches, and dry grasses, carefully arranging them in a circle to create a pit. As the fire grew, Jane's friends would bring out plates of food, filled with fragrant stews, rice dishes, and freshly baked bread. The aroma of spices and herbs would waft across the camp, tantalizing her senses and making her mouth water. As they settled around the fire, they would share stories of their day, laughing and joking with each other. Jane would listen intently, fascinated by the details of their lives, their hopes and dreams, and the challenges they faced in this wild and beautiful land. The flames of the fire would flicker and dance, casting shadows on the faces of her new friends, illuminating their features in a warm, golden glow. The sounds of the Savanna would fade into the background, replaced by the crackling of the flames and the gentle chatter of her companions. As the night wore on, the stories would become more intricate, weaving together tales of their ancestors, myths and legends, and the history of the land. Jane would listen, enraptured, as they described their deep connection to the earth and to the wildlife that roamed it. As the fire began to die down, they would sit in silence for a moment, watching the last embers flicker and fade. The sounds of the savannah would return, a distant roar of lions or the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. Jane would retire to her tent, filled with a sense of wonder and gratitude. She was grateful for the warmth and generosity of her new friends, for the opportunity to explore this incredible place, and for the chance to learn more about herself and the world around her. For tomorrow would be the very first day to go explore the savannah with her new friends. As she crawled into her tent, Jane could feel the cool night air on her skin. She took a deep breath and listened to the sounds of the savannah coming alive around her. The chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves mingled with the distant howling of hyenas and the occasional roar of a lion. Inside her tent, Jane prepared for her first night under the stars. She unrolled her sleeping bag and laid it out carefully, making sure it was flat and free of any debris. She set up her camping lantern and turned it on, casting a warm yellow glow across the tent. She rummaged through her backpack, pulling out her compass, maps, and a book on African wildlife that she had brought along to help her identify the various species she was sure to encounter. Finally, Jane settled down into her sleeping bag, feeling the soft material against her skin. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the thrill of anticipation wash over her. She knew that the coming days and weeks would be filled with adventure and excitement as she explored the vast savannah and all its wonders. As she drifted off to sleep, Jane felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. She knew that she had made the right choice in coming to Africa, and she was excited to see where her journey would take her next. The next morning, Jane woke up to the sound of birds singing and the warmth of the rising sun on her face. She stretched her limbs and slowly crawled out of her tent, taking in her surroundings with a renewed sense of wonder. The savannah seemed to glow in the morning light, with the golden grasses and towering baobab trees stretching out as far as the eye could see. It was a breathtaking sight, and Jane couldn't wait to start exploring. She made her way to the central meeting point, where her new friends were already gathered, eagerly preparing for their first adventure. They greeted her with smiles and warm hugs, and she felt a sense of camaraderie and belonging that she had never experienced before. As they set out into the savannah, Jane was entranced by the variety of textures and patterns she saw as they walked through the savannah. The bark of the baobab trees was rough and gnarled, while the leaves of the acacia trees were delicate and feathery. She reached out to touch the velvety petals of a nearby flower, marveling at its vibrant colors and intricate design. She even noticed the tiny insects crawling across the grass, each one a fascinating world unto itself. The sounds of the savannah were equally captivating. Jane heard the chirping of birds, the buzzing of insects, and the rustling of leaves as animals moved through the underbrush. She even caught a glimpse of a group of baboons in the distance, their calls echoing across the plain. As they continued on their journey, Jane felt more and more connected to the land and the creatures that called it home. Jane's eyes widened with excitement and trepidation as she heard the distant roar of lions echoing through the savannah. The sound seemed to reverberate through her entire body, filling her with a mix of awe and fear. She had seen these majestic creatures from a safe distance during her journey so far, but the thought of encountering them up close sent shivers down her spine. Despite her nervousness, Jane was thrilled at the prospect of seeing them in their natural habitat, and she quickened her pace in hopes of getting a closer look. She listened intently for any other sounds, hoping to pinpoint the direction of the lions and catch a glimpse of them in the wild. Jane felt a mix of fear and excitement as the roar grew louder, signaling that the lions were getting closer. She couldn't believe that she was actually in the presence of such magnificent creatures, and her heart raced with anticipation. As they moved closer to the source of the sound, Jane saw a group of lions lounging in the shade of a large tree. Jane's eyes widened as she caught sight of the lions. They were larger than she had imagined, their sleek bodies rippling with muscles. The males had impressive manes of dark flowing hair, which gave them a regal and powerful appearance. The females were equally impressive, with their sharp, intelligent eyes and lithe bodies. As Jane watched them, she felt a mix of fear and awe. It was a humbling experience to be in the presence of such majestic creatures, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of respect and admiration for them. The lions seemed to sense her presence, but they didn't appear to be bothered by it. Instead, they continued to lounge in the shade of the tree, occasionally stretching or grooming themselves lazily. Jane's guide explained that they were likely taking a break from hunting and that they posed no danger as long as they weren't provoked. Jane watched in amazement as the lions stretched and yawned, occasionally lifting their heads to survey their surroundings. She was struck by their beauty and power, and she felt a deep sense of respect and admiration for these majestic animals. After a while, the lions grew restless and began to stir, and Jane and her guide decided it was time to move on. As they continued on, the group came across a breathtaking sight, a group of zebras grazing in a clearing. Ine watched in awe as the zebras interacted with each other, their movements almost like a choreographed dance. She noticed how they would nuzzle each other affectionately, and occasionally, one of the zebras would break out into a gallop, kicking up dust and causing the others to scatter. It was a mesmerizing sight, and Jane couldn't take her eyes off of them. As they approached closer, Jane noticed the intricate patterns of the zebra's stripes. Each one was unique, and she couldn't help but wonder if it was a way for them to identify one another. She was struck by how perfectly adapted the zebras were to their environment, their stripes acting as a natural camouflage against the tall grasses and shrubs. The group continued to watch the zebras for some time, soaking in the beauty and majesty of these magnificent creatures. Jane's sharp eyes caught sight of a family of warthogs trotting along in the distance. Their tails stood up like antennas, and their rough gray-brown hides were covered in coarse bristles. They moved quickly, their short legs churning up the dust as they made their way through the tall grass. Jane was fascinated by the warthog's unique appearance, and she couldn't help but wonder about their daily lives in the savannah. She watched as the family disappeared into the distance, blending into the landscape like natural inhabitants of the savannah. As they approached the watering hole, Jane could feel her heart racing with excitement. She had always been fascinated by elephants, and the chance to see them up close in their natural habitat was a dream come true. As they drew closer, she saw a family of elephants frolicking in the water, their trunks shooting sprays of water into the air. She watched in amazement as they rolled around in the water, flapping their ears and trumpeting joyfully. The elephant's skin was a deep gray, rough and wrinkled like the bark of an ancient tree. Their long trunks were like powerful hoses, capable of spraying water with incredible force or delicately picking up small branches to eat. Jane marveled at their size, as they dwarfed everything around them. The largest of them stood tall and proud, with long tusks that glinted in the sunlight. Watching them move in the water was like witnessing a graceful dance, as they glided effortlessly through the liquid, their massive bodies seemingly weightless. Jane's eyes were drawn to the matriarch of the herd, a wise and experienced elephant with deep wrinkles etched into her skin. She stood tall and proud, her massive tusks curving gracefully from her mouth. Jane could sense a calm intelligence emanating from the elephant, a sense of wisdom and understanding that came with years of experience in the savannah. The matriarch's eyes were bright and watchful, scanning the surrounding area for any signs of danger. Jane watched as the young elephants played around in the water, splashing and diving under the surface. Their trunks, still growing into their full length, sprayed water in all directions, creating a refreshing mist in the hot savanna air. The older elephants, including the matriarch, waded slowly through the water, their long trunks curling up to spray water over their backs. The sounds of the elephants were mesmerizing. The trumpeting calls of the young ones mixed with the deep, rumbling growls of the older elephants, creating a symphony of sounds that resonated deep within Jane's heart. She could feel the power and majesty of these incredible creatures, and it filled her with a sense of reverence and awe. As Jane took out her camera, she felt a sense of urgency to capture the beauty and majesty of the elephants before her. She adjusted the settings on her camera, trying to get the perfect shot. The elephants were moving quickly, splashing water and rolling around in the watering hole. Jane tried to anticipate their movements and capture their playful antics in her photos. She was determined to immortalize the moment and share it with the world. Finally, she got the perfect shot. A young elephant spraying water with its trunk, a look of pure joy on its face. Jane smiled, feeling grateful for the chance to witness such a magical moment. As they walked, Jane's new friends began to share their knowledge of the savanna with her. They pointed out different types of trees, shrubs, and grasses, explaining their uses and significance in the ecosystem. They showed her how to identify animal tracks, from the large paw prints of lions to the delicate tracks of gazelles. Jane was amazed at the amount of information they were able to glean from a simple track on the ground. As they continued their trek, Jane learned about the different calls of the animals in the savanna. Her new friends taught her to listen for the distinct roars of lions, the grunts of hippos, and the trumpet calls of elephants. They explained how each animal had its own language, and how the sounds they made conveyed different messages to others of their species. Jane was also introduced to the medicinal properties of various plants. Her friends showed her how to identify different herbs and plants that could be used to treat common ailments, from stomach aches to headaches. They also explained how different plants were used to create remedies for more serious conditions, such as malaria and infections. One of the most valuable lessons Jane learned from her new friends was how to find water in the savanna. They showed her how to identify different types of plants that indicated the presence of water underground. They also demonstrated how to collect dew from grass and leaves in the early morning, and how to dig for water in dry riverbeds. As Jane continued her journey through the savanna, she suddenly caught sight of a group of giraffes in the distance. Their long necks stretched high above the trees, and their brown and white patches stood out sharply against the lush green foliage. She marveled at their impossibly long necks, which seemed to stretch on forever as they reached up to nibble on the leaves of tall trees. Their striking patchwork coats of orange and brown spots were uniquely patterned and varied among individuals. As she approached the group, she noticed their long, thin legs, which seemed almost delicate but were capable of supporting their enormous bodies. Jane watched in amazement as the giraffes moved gracefully and with surprising speed, their long tails swishing back and forth to ward off pesky flies. She also noticed their strikingly beautiful eyes with long eyelashes, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for these majestic creatures. Jane was fascinated by the giraffes' behavior as well. She observed how they communicated with each other through various postures, gestures, and vocalizations, all of which seemed to be part of a complex social network. As they pushed themselves to explore deeper into the savanna, the landscape around them began to change. The grasses became taller and more densely packed, obscuring their view of the horizon. The air became thicker with the scent of blooming flowers and decaying leaves, and the sounds of the animals around them grew more intense. Despite the challenges, Jane was exhilarated by the adventure. She felt like she was discovering a whole new world, one that was teeming with life and beauty. She marveled at the resilience of the animals and plants that managed to survive in such harsh conditions, and she admired the skill and knowledge of her new friends as they navigated through the terrain. As they trekked deeper into the savanna, Jane encountered new species of animals she had never seen before. She saw flocks of brightly colored birds flitting about in the trees, and she caught glimpses of small mammals darting through the underbrush. She was fascinated by the diversity of life around her, and she marveled at how each species had adapted to the unique challenges of the savanna. Despite the physical demands of the journey, Jane was filled with a sense of wonder and awe. She felt like she was part of something much larger than herself, a small piece in the vast ecosystem of the savanna. And with every step, she grew more determined to protect this fragile and beautiful world for generations to come. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the savanna, Jane and her friends started looking for a suitable spot to make camp for the night. They scouted the area, looking for a place that offered some protection from predators and a source of fresh water. Finally, they found a small clearing beneath a cluster of trees surrounded by tall grasses. They quickly got to work, setting up their tents and building a fire. Jane was amazed at how efficiently her friends worked, moving around the campsite with ease and skillfully preparing their camp for the night. She watched as they gathered wood for the fire and boiled water for drinking, all while keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. As they sat around the fire, the crackling flames casting dancing shadows across their faces, Jane and her friends began to share stories of their adventures in the savanna. One of them recounted a time when he had come face to face with a pride of lions, while another spoke of a narrow escape from a group of charging rhinoceroses. Jane listened intently, marveling at the bravery and resilience of her new companions. As they shared their tales, they passed around bowls of grilled meat and vegetables, the smoky aroma of the cooking filling the air. The food was simple, but after a long day of hiking and exploring, it tasted like the most delicious feast Jane had ever had. They washed it down with water from a nearby stream, cool and refreshing on their parched throats. As the night fell, the savanna came to life with a symphony of sounds that echoed through the air. The distant howl of hyenas carried on the wind, adding an eerie quality to the night. The occasional roar of a lion made Jane's heart race with excitement, reminding her of the wildness of this place. Around the campfire, Jane and her friends relaxed, enjoying the warmth of the flames and the companionship of each other. The soft glow of the fire illuminated their faces as they shared stories of their adventures in the savanna. Jane listened intently, marveling at the bravery and resilience of her new friends. As they chatted, the stars twinkled brightly overhead, casting a soft light over the camp. The gentle rustling of the tall grasses added a soothing background noise, creating a peaceful and serene atmosphere. Despite the dangers that lurked in the darkness beyond their camp, Jane felt a deep sense of calm and contentment settle over her. It was getting late, so the friends settled into their tents for the night. As Jane settled into her sleeping bag for the night, the sounds of the savanna grew louder around her. The rustling of leaves and the occasional snort of an animal could be heard in the distance. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, trying to let the sounds lull her into a state of relaxation. As she lay there, she couldn't help but reflect on the incredible experiences she had had that day. The sights and sounds of the savanna had left an indelible impression on her, and she felt grateful for the opportunity to witness such a beautiful and untamed place. She let her thoughts wander as she drifted off into a meditative state, feeling at peace with herself and the world around her. The cool night air flowed gently through her tent, and the soft rustling of the leaves outside provided a soothing background sound. Despite the occasional howl of hyenas or roar of lions, Jane felt safe and secure in her tent. She knew she was in the hands of experienced guides who had taken every precaution to ensure their safety. She felt a sense of trust and connection with her new friends, and knew that the bonds they had formed in the savanna would last a lifetime. As Jane settled deeper into her sleeping bag, she felt her body sink into the soft fabric, and she felt the gentle warmth surround her. The sounds of the savanna faded into the background, replaced by the calming rhythm of her own breath. She felt her muscles relax and her mind clear, and she allowed herself to drift off into a peaceful sleep, safe and secure in the embrace of the wild. The stars continued to twinkle above, as if keeping watch over her, guiding her into a restful slumber.